Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on Android with Strato, and this is a big PSA. Strato has not officially released at the time of filming. This website here, stratoemulator.com, is 100% fake. Unfortunately, I've received a whole bunch of messages asking me if this website is legit, and the answer here is no. No, it's not even close. Under the ROM section, for some reason they've got an RGT85 video. And under drivers here, for turnip drivers for example, they've got a whole bunch of MediaFire links. Turnip drivers are available 100% free open source and on GitHub. Why would they be hosted on MediaFire? Interestingly enough, this fake Strato website looks very similar to the EggNS website. The top menu bar is almost identical. Go figure. Currently, Strato's official home is over on GitHub. I'll drop a link to it in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. At the time of filming, there are no official releases just yet. You're gonna have to be patient. And additionally here, if you are looking for turnip drivers, they're also available on GitHub, and I'll drop a link to this in the description below as well, and I do recommend checking that one out. But moving on, and next up here, we're talking about multi-system emulator Mesen, and Mesen just added in some brand new systems. So if you are a fan of Sega, you're gonna like this one. They added in Sega Master System Game Gear and SG-1000 support. Now if we take a look at the top link here, this does say Mesen 2, but it's the continuation of Mesen. Mesen is alive and well. And speaking about alive and well, next up we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Panda3DS. And Panda3DS announced that they will be attending this year's FOSDEM and actually presenting. The presentation is on the Nintendo 3DS architecture, and no surprise here, also Panda3DS. And the presentation is called Panda3DS Climbing the Tree of 3DS Emulation. For those who may not be aware, FOSDEM stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Free and Open Source Software Developers European Meeting, depending on how you want to interpret that. For 2024 here, it's being held in Brussels on the 3rd and 4th of February. Honestly here, FOSDEM is a pretty awesome event. There's a ton of topics, a whole bunch of content, and I'll drop a link to the website in the description below and the event that you wanted to learn more. I do recommend checking it out. If you're in Brussels, I recommend going. There's even an emulator category, which is awesome. Next up here, we're talking about something that was unreleased, but you can try it out in your browser, and it's pretty cool. It's called Nintendo Game & Watch Multi-Screen Tetris Jr. model TR66. And if you see it here over on itch.io, there is a play button. Now, the Tetris Jr. Game & Watch prototype is arguably one of the rarest prototypes out there, and you can play around with a full 3D model here. You can even open it up and have fun with Tetris Jr. If you are curious about this, I'll drop a link to it in the description below and feel free to check it out. Moving on, and we're talking about iOS gaming, and arguably here, this is a massive win for iOS gaming preservation. There's been a whole bunch of beta and prototype iOS apps found from between 2012 to 2015. And these include games like Balloons and Angry Birds and also Roblox. And they've all been found in the Wayback Machine, and they've existed there for a while. I would argue that this discovery is massive. It's said here that terabytes of Testflight, which are a pre-release app, were discovered. And these are pretty much any iPhone app under the sun. Taking a look at the links provided for the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, and there are a ton of different entries here. The first link has 3,930 entries. The second link has over 10,000 entries. And the third link has over 10,000 entries. I'll drop a link to a very helpful tweet in the description below in the event that you wanted to learn more. And speaking about iOS, next up here we're talking about Game Boy emulation on iOS and also Mac and Windows with Sameboy. Sameboy version 0.16 was just released, and it's a pretty big one. So with this new version of Sameboy, there's a brand new fully featured iOS front end. It supports every iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch model running at least iOS 11. They do recommend iOS 13 or newer. It can be installed by sideloading using the Alt Store, Troll Store, or using a jailbreak. They say here there are save states, scaling filters, in-game rumble support, Game Boy camera support, motion controls for supported games, notifications for alarm clock enabled games, advanced emulation settings, and more. There's now rewind, fast forward, and slow motion features. There's a whole bunch of accuracy improvements and performance improvements and bug fixes. So if you're using iOS and you like Game Boy emulation, Sameboy might be worth checking out. And the best thing here is that it's 100% free and open source. And speaking about open source and also bug fixes, next up here we're talking about Amiberry, an Amiga emulator for ARM boards, specifically the Raspberry Pi. So at the time of filming, version 5.6.5 is the latest update, and we've got a whole bunch of bug fixes here and some new stuff. They've added in MIDI emulation, and they also now scan for ROMs recursively. On top of that, they've implemented support for the Arcadia and Casablanca platforms. The GUI colors and font are now configurable, and even more. Next up here, we're talking about Wine, which stands for Wine is not an emulator, and possibly something else. Anyways, here Wine just released version 9.0 release candidate 2, and we've got some game fixes. So for Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, the mouse pointer is now visible. Previously the mouse would work, it was just invisible, and hopefully now you can see it. And for Dolphin Emulator, which is Wii and GameCube emulation, it's now booting. Previously, there was a bug preventing this from booting with Wine. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Super Mario 64, and footage has surfaced of Luigi in the game. Apparently here, Luigi was planned to be in the game, but was removed in the final year of development due to some memory issues. If you wanted to see the short glimpse of Luigi in the game, I'll drop a link to the timestamp Space World 95 video in the description below. Interestingly enough, Luigi was supposed to be in the 64DD version of the game, but I haven't seen that prototype anywhere. And I also haven't seen the Space World 95 prototype with Luigi and Super Mario 64. If you know of either of these prototypes in existence, let me know in the comments below. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Elden Ring. And if you're a fan of Elden Ring, you might be excited to know that there's an expansion that may be on the horizon very soon. As soon as February 2024, and a big game expansion in 2025. Based on the images I've seen, I'm pretty sure the February 2024 expansion is going to be real, and it might be called Shadow of the Erdtree. And this may have leaked thanks to the Bandai Namco and Thrustmaster collab. And speaking about February, next up here we're talking about KDE 6, but on mobile. Now KDE 6 is set to release on February 28th of 2024, and KDE 6 on mobile may release shortly after that. The developer here showcased some updates on KDE 6 on mobile, and it's shaping up pretty nicely. There's more applet support and performance updates. Now, based on my understanding of what I read in the article, there is one minor hiccup, or possibly a major hiccup depending on what device you have. It appears it's going to require something like Post-Market OS in order to function. And Post-Market OS, while it does work well, it's not compatible with every single device out there. I would argue it may be fairly limited in devices that it actually applies to, and arguably no recent phones. And speaking about 2024, next up here we're talking about Google Stadia. And if you haven't switched your Google Stadia controller to Bluetooth mode yet, you've got another year to do it. Previously it was capped at December 31st, 2023, and now it's showing December 31st, 2024. So for those few of you who may not have done this one yet, you may want to consider switching it over to Bluetooth. Next up here, I've got a short one for you because it's a short film. If you're a fan of Sega, if you're a fan of Sonic, if you're a fan of Shadow, you may be a fan of this fan-made short film. It's just over 26 minutes in length. It's 100% free. It's on YouTube, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Based on comments here, this is being very well received. The whole premise to this one is it's a backstory of Shadow the Hedgehog 50 years ago at Space Colony Arc. And speaking about checking stuff out on YouTube, last up here we're talking about Video Game Esoterica. And Video Game Esoterica has just released a couple of videos worth checking out. The first one here is for N64 emulation with the Mr. FPGA. and it appears that the N64 core has reached 100% compatibility with retail games. In my opinion, that's a big accomplishment, and the N64 core also now supports fast boot. Check out that video. His second video is about a lost arcade game from Konami that has now been found and preserved, and it's called Gashaaaan. I have never played this game. It seems a little bit wacky here, and if you've played this one or if you know about it, let me know in the comments below. And if you wanted to learn how to play it, I'll drop a link to this video in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. And last up here is a bonus piece of news. We're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC and Android with Yuzu. And Yuzu got a couple of pretty good updates. The first update here is for Yuzu on PC, and it's for mainline 1654, which was previously in early access. And it fixes increasing slowdown, input lag, and crashes that were happening in long gameplay sessions, especially when a synchronous presentation option was enabled. And that is now fixed, so if you like to play Yuzu for very long sessions, hopefully it's better for you now. And the second update is for Yuzu on Android. Now, if you're not updating Yuzu regularly through the GitHub and you're relying on the Google Play Store, well, you're going to like this update. And this is for the free mainline build of Yuzu. They've implemented native code execution, or NCE. This massively improves Android performance here. They say to make sure to switch to this if you are updating the app in Advanced Settings, Debug, and CPU Backend. And on top of that, because if that wasn't big enough, they've also added in more stuff here. They've added in game directory management, so you can select multiple folders for your games list. They fixed crashes with turnip drivers for games like Red Dead Redemption and Luigi's Mansion 3. They've also got a minor performance boost for mobile GPUs. They've added a drop shadow to the FPS counter for improving visibility and even more. You may want to check out the latest Google Play Store version of Yuzu. It may have some surprises in there for you. Honestly, it's nice to see the Google Play Store version get updated, because I'm assuming out of the over 1 million downloads here, only a fraction of these people would actually know to go to the GitHub to pick up the latest version instead of waiting for Google Play. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a ton today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.